A cinnamon roll is good, but a homemade cinnamon roll is great. The base of a cinnamon roll is a sweet egg dough, so we add a few extra ingredients like milk and egg and butter to a regular bread dough. If you want a supermarket shortcut for your cinnamon rolls, you can buy some bread dough in the grocery store, but it won't be quite as delicious as this sweet bread dough. So here's how you make the sweet bread dough. I've put half a cup of milk and half a cup of water in the pan here, and I've just taken the chill out because the milk comes out of the fridge. You want this about 100 degrees. Just a little bit warm. To that milk, I'm going to sprinkle in my yeast. This is instant, dry, active yeast, and just a pinch of sugar. Now the reason you do this is to proof your yeast because you want to make sure your yeast is indeed active. So in about 5 minutes, you'll see that yeast start to foam a little bit. That's perfect. That means you're not going to waste all of the next steps. You'll know your yeast is working. Now in this bowl of a stand mixer, I've put 3.5 cups of flour. I'm going to add the rest of my sugar. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. And we're going to mix that together. So once your dry ingredients are evenly distributed and your yeast has proven to you that it is indeed active, now we can add some other ingredients to our liquids. In goes a little vanilla extract, 1 egg yolk, and about 1/4 cup of melted butter. We're going to whisk that together. Let's swap out that attachment for the dough hook attachment. And then we're going to drizzle that into our stand mixer with all the dry ingredients while it's mixing. So every once in a while, you're going to scrape down that dough hook and bring the dough back to the base of the bowl so that it can get fully mixed. But you'll see how clean the bowl is. That's a good sign. That's showing you the dough's coming together, picking up all the pieces of flour on the side. You want to let your dough mix and knead like this for about 5 minutes until it is nicely elastic and pliable. Take it off of that dough hook and shape it into a ball. Once it's in a nice ball shape like that, you're going to put it onto a clean cookie sheet, cover it with a clean kitchen towel, and just let that rest in a warm part of your kitchen for about an hour. Here is our dough that has rested, and you'll see it's easily doubled in bulk. We're going to do something called punching it down. It is exactly what it sounds like. You punch that dough down, and then we're going to put it onto a piece of silicone liner that I have cut to the exact shape and size that I need my dough to end up being. You're going to need a little bit of flour on that silicone liner. So sprinkle a little flour, and that's going to help the dough release from the liner at the end. Place this down, a little more flour on top, and then you're going to roll this into a rectangle about 13 inches by 16 inches. So cutting your silicone liner to exactly that measurement gives you an idea of exactly where you're going. So do your best to get that dough into a rectangle. Sometimes it fights with you a little bit, but move those corners out, trying to get corners if you can. The best way to do that is to start with the dough in as much of a rectangular shape as possible. So I've got my dough ready to go here. It's going to rest for just a minute while I prepare the filling. I've got some brown sugar. I've got some cinnamon. And what will make my life a lot easier is if I whisk them together to get rid of any lumps. Now I'm going to take some butter. I've melted some butter on the stove here, and I'm going to brush that melted butter all over the dough. Be generous with that butter, and once you have it all coated, now we're going to start to spread that cinnamon sugar all over. Make sure you go to the very edges all the way, except for one of the short edges. That you're going to leave blank. I always think it's important to get every last piece of dough covered in cinnamon sugar because that might be your piece that you're eating. So cover it all really, really well. Now turn this so that the short end is towards you, and use that silicone liner to gently lift the edge and roll it over. Start rolling that dough, and you want to roll it as tightly as possible. This is going to be a bit challenging on the ends, but just keep rolling it tight, even if you tighten the ends more than you tighten the middle of the dough. Once it's all rolled up towards that blank end, seal that blank end to the cinnamon roll with the buttered edge. Just press it as firmly as you can. Now we're going to transfer this roll to a cutting board. Tuck in those ends and push them towards each other so you have sort of a flat edge. Sometimes I use a board scraper to do this. And then I'm going to start to mark the dough. We want to cut it into 12 pieces. So I'm going to mark about the center, and then I'm going to mark the center of each of those halves, and then I'm going to make 2 slices between all of my original slices. Then grabbing a sharp knife, with a gentle sawing motion, don't push down too quickly, cut those rolls, and look what you end up with. Beautiful little cinnamon buns. We're going to transfer those onto a 9 by 13 baking sheet. We're going to cover that with another kitchen towel and let it rest and rise for another hour. So while these rise for another hour, preheat your oven to 375 degrees. These cut and rolled cinnamon rolls have rested for an hour and risen beautifully. You see how they've pushed up next to each other. They're going to bake for 25 to 30 minutes. You're going to keep your eye on them and see when they're nicely browned on top. Let's let those sit for just a minute while we make some cream cheese icing to go on top. If we were to put the cream cheese icing on right now, it would melt right off. Cream cheese icing. Here, I've taken some cream cheese and butter and just melted it in the microwave for just a few seconds to soften it slightly. We're going to beat this up with some vanilla extract and then add powdered sugar until it's all one beautiful uniform icing. Okay, delicious cream cheese icing on top of our cinnamon rolls. We're going to just dollop it on the top, right in the center of each one. It'll start to melt a little bit because there's still a little heat left to these beautiful cinnamon rolls. And then we're going to spread it around to the outside. Now, if you're making the cinnamon rolls ahead of time, leave the icing until the last minute. Reheat them gently in the oven and then put the icing on so that it goes into all the nooks and cracks. There you have a dozen cinnamon rolls iced, ready to go, whether it's an afternoon snack or a delicious breakfast.